Hello and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Monica Statler, and I am the Director of Graduate Training Programs for ASPPH, or the Association of Schools and Programs of Public Health. Thank you so much for joining us today. The purpose of today's webinar is to share information about fellowship opportunities that are sponsored by ASPPH for soon-to-be graduates and recent alumni of our member CEPH accredited schools and programs of public health. During today's webinars, we're going to share information about fellowship opportunities at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or the CDC. In addition, we'll provide an overview of the general application process for all ASPPH fellowships. We're also joined today by two speakers who will provide their own firsthand experience and knowledge of the fellowship programs, Devin Draymond and Raquel Ramos, current ASPPH fellows at the CDC. Lastly, we've allocated time at the very end of the program for questions and answers. Before we start, a few housekeeping details. At any time during the webinar, you can type in your question into the questions box or the Q&A box, which you can find on the toolbar on the bottom of your computer screen, as seen here. And we will address all questions during the Q&A session after the formal presentation has concluded. Now to begin. The Association of Schools and Programs of Public Health, known as ASPPH, is the voice of accredited public health education. We represent schools and programs accredited by the Council on Education for Public Health, or as commonly referenced, CEPH. ASPPH is pleased to partner with federal agencies, including the CDC, the EPA, and most recently, the USDA, to offer public health training opportunities for students and recent graduates of our member schools and programs. Now, you might ask yourself, what distinguishes the ASPPH training programs from all other fellowships out there? First and foremost, with over 35 years of training program experience, ASPPH provides highly respected and recognized mentor training programs specifically aimed at fostering the growth of early career public health professionals. We have time-tested relationships with federal agencies that are involved in public health, such as the CDC and EPA, and previously with the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, or NHTSA. The performance of our fellows speaks for itself, as a significant number of our program participants go on to become full-time employees or contractors at their host agencies. In addition, as an ASPPH fellow, you become part of a network of over 2,300 ASPPH fellowship and internship alumni who are public health leaders in private, nonprofit, academic, and government organizations. Wherever you are in your career, you can always contact ASPPH and ASPPH fellow and intern alumni for networking, advice, and support. ASPPH fellowships are graduate level training programs that provide effective practical preparation for early career professionals through the enhanced interplay between the didactic educational experience and fundamental public health concepts and real world experiences that enable our students to apply these concepts. Our fellowships are long-term training assignments that are typically 1 to 2 years, and in some circumstances, 3 years. Fellowships are open to recent graduates, defined as students who will have received a master's or doctorate degree by the start of the fellowship, or alumni who have graduated within the previous 5 years of the fellowship start date. Applicants' degrees must come from ASPPH member institutions. During this presentation, we will focus on fellowship opportunities that are scheduled to begin in September of 2023 at the CDC. Now, to reiterate, to be eligible for ASPPH fellowship programs, applicants must have received a master's or doctorate degree from an ASPPH member, CEPH accredited school or program of public health. The graduate degree must have been earned prior to the beginning of the fellowship and no earlier than the previous 5 years. Now, we're often asked if you must have an MPH degree specifically, or if it's okay to have, say, an MSPH or other master's degree in public health. And the answer depends on where you received your degree. If you attended an ASPPH member school of public health, then any graduate degree received through the School of Public Health is acceptable. If you attended an ASPPH member program of public health, only those degrees which are accredited by CEPH are eligible, and that'll vary by program. The same principle applies to doctoral degrees. They must come from the ASPPH member CEPH accredited school or program of public health. Excuse me. So all applicants for ASPPH fellowships must also be US citizens or hold visas permitting permanent residence in the US, i.e. have a green card to be eligible. For international students who are on today's webcast, we suggest you check with your school's career services office, as well as the ASPPH website, publichealthjobs.org, to find opportunities for which you might be eligible. You may also research opportunities available through the federal agency in which you're interested. Now, fellowship assignments are 12-month placements. Some ASPPH programs offer extensions for 2 and possibly 3 years based on the host agency's availability of funding and the fellow's satisfactory progress. Fellows receive a competitive training stipend, an allowance for health insurance, and sometimes a travel and training allowance, although the travel and training allowance isn't always guaranteed. The stipends and allowances will vary by program and fellowship location. All fellows must establish goals and objectives that they will accomplish during their placement. These goals and objectives are established in collaboration with the host agency mentors and are reported to ASPPH at the beginning of the fellowship. Fellows will then report to ASPPH and their mentors on their progress in accomplishing their progress throughout the placement period. At the end of the assignment, each fellow is required to submit a final report and assessment. Specific fellowship opportunities will be discussed in just a moment. But for now, the best person to describe a program is somebody who's actually experienced it. As such, I'm pleased that Devin Drayman can be with us today. Devin is a current fellow in CDC's National Center for Immunization and Respiratory Diseases, or NCIRD. Devin, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Monica. Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here today. My name is Devin. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a CDC fellow with ASPPH. And just some background about me, I got my MPH in global health epidemiology from the University of Michigan. So naturally, my fellowship is really data heavy. It involves mostly data collection, manipulation, and analytical work. I mainly use SAS as my programming language. And so I work in the assessment branch within my center. And basically what we do is monitor and report vaccine coverage and exemption rates for states and territories. We publish our reports in an annual MMWR, as well as on an interactive data dashboard. So that's been really cool. I got to publish my first article ever, actually just last month. So that was great. And it's also important to me that I get to work with both qualitative and quantitative data. And so I get to do both of those in my fellowship. But really my work is important to me because in addition to data management work, I get to interact directly with states and their immunization programs and territories that are, in different parts of the world, and provide them with individualized reports throughout the data reporting process. And so observations from our subject matter experts and comments from our statisticians and recommendations for those programs, those are all provided in return for them reporting data to us. And so I get to be a part of maintaining those important relationships between federal and state federal and state agencies, and I get to improve program processes. So it's really cool to work with data and do kind of some programmatic work. All of those kind of data things aside, some highlights that I've really enjoyed in this fellowship. Number one, I love the mentorship. I have a very small team within, a little bit bigger of a branch within a bigger division. And so you have access to a small team of mentors while you still have access to the subject matter experts that come within a huge division of scientists. Last week, I attended a CDC webinar where I got to see one of my favorite authors, Dr. Atul Gawande, speak about global health security. A month ago, my mentor had me attend a full week boot camp that was 5 days of like intensive training with the statistical package R. And those are just some of like the many things that I've really enjoyed. But because I have a travel and training stipend in my fellowship specifically, I'm hoping to go to my first conference this year and potentially present what we published in the MMWR. And I think a really cool addition that ASPPH specifically has contributed is the curriculum that they tailor for each individual fellow. I was able to talk with leadership about that and kind of not only focus on EPI, because that's really kind of what I've been trained in already, but also expand my knowledge base a little bit more into program eval, because I'm really interested in working in that as well. And so I think that's the important part of being an ASPPH fellow, is that we have a relatively small cohort compared to a lot of the other young professional organizations and fellowship opportunities. And so those relationships are a lot more individualized, and we have like more rich discussions, I think, during meetings and during those opportunities. But yeah, I think being an ASPPH fellow helps my career because I personally graduated during the peak of COVID-19 pandemic. And so I was just kind of still searching for more hands-on experiences to develop the hard skills that I hadn't really had an opportunity to during school. And I really kind of wanted to solidify if I wanted to work exclusively in data or I also wanted to do programmatic work. And so I've been able to kind of explore that more with less pressure of just like grinding for a job. There's a lot more of time and emphasis on learning. Yeah, and another point I really wanted to drive home was that ASPPH has a long time standing relationship with these federal agencies, and that makes it really easy to network. My mentor right now was an ASPPH intern like decades ago. And so like that's a time-honored relationship that matters, and it holds a lot of weight within this agency. And so they recognize that you uphold this certain standard, so they kind of know what to expect when you engage with other CDC employees and federal employees. But yeah, I think that networking within the government space is incredible. The events that you're given access to, where you can shake the hands of your public health heroes and brainstorm with these officers and attend like these clubs and organizations and meetings, have really just enabled me to kind of tap into this network of really powerful and intelligent and inspiring people. So it kind of like keeps you interested and keeps you galvanized for public health, and so that you don't get that fatigue of just working as a young professional. All that to say, I've obviously had an excellent experience so far, and I'm really grateful to be here. Thanks so much for your time.
Great. Thank you so much, Devin, for sharing your experience. And so wonderful to hear that your mentor was one of our interns herself. So that's terrific. So now we're going to discuss ASPPH programs that are that it's currently accepting applications. And that is, of course, our program with the CDC. And the application cycle is currently open and accepting applications. The deadline is March 2nd. So you still have a couple of weeks to gather all your materials and to reach out to recommenders and collect those letters of recommendation. Oops, sorry about that, and get your application together. So the thing to remember is that this deadline applies to all fellowship materials. So your letters of recommendation, faculty advisor verification, et cetera, are also due on this date. So we're going to discuss a little bit more about this in just a few minutes. So the goal of the ASPPH CDC Public Health Fellowship Program is to identify new approaches and opportunities for field experience in which recent graduates and early career public health professionals with graduate degrees can apply your skills and knowledge that are learned in the classroom to real world public health and population health practice. Now, the program provides fellows the opportunity to train under nationally recognized experts who work to protect human health and at the national and international level in a variety of tracks. And this year's tracks include health education, interpersonal violence, overdose prevention, suicide prevention, mental health, health equity, emergency preparedness, and of course, core public health. The fellowship locations this coming year are based primarily in Atlanta, Georgia, but we also have one position that will be based in San Juan, Puerto Rico, and Hyattsville, Maryland, which is just outside of Washington, D.C. Fellowship placements are expected to start in September of 2023. Now, information regarding ASPPH fellowships is readily available through your career services or your student liaison office at your school or program of public health. In addition, you may also easily access information online, including all application deadlines and detailed application instructions. Just go to the main page of the ASPPH website and click on the link for students and alumni at the top of the page, and then click Fellowships and Internships. You can also go directly to the Fellowships application portal where you can create an account and apply. A great way to stay up to date about training opportunities is to subscribe to the ASPPH Friday letter. We announce all our fellowship openings through the ASPPH Friday letter and advertise partner opportunities as well. So I'm now going to talk about the application process. To apply for a fellowship, applicants first need to create an account in the ASPPH application portal if you don't already have one. For those of you who already have an account in your system, you can sign in from this page as well. To begin, there are 5 main components of the application package. First is your CV or resume. Secondly, you'll need 2 recommendation letters, which are specific to the program being applied to. Now, suggested references are individuals with whom you have built a substantial relationship in the following areas, whether it's academia, public health practice, volunteer community service, or other professional relationships that can effectively address your skills, qualities, and personal attributes. Now, it's critical to select references who can speak well to your assets and abilities that make you a strong candidate for the fellowship. In addition, you'll need a graduate transcript from your school or program of public health, your graduate degree only. We do not require you to submit transcripts from undergraduate education. Now, for the application, you may submit an official or an unofficial transcript. However, if you're selected for the position, you will need to provide an official transcript before you begin the fellowship. In addition, you will be required to write a brief essay or personal statement of no more than 1,500 words, which is specific to the position to which you are applying. So if you apply to only one position, then you only need to submit one essay. But if you apply to, say, 3 positions, you'll need to submit 3 different essays that address each position specifically. In those essays, you'll want to remember to explain your personal and professional interests, strengths, and qualifications for succeeding in this particular fellowship assignment and how it will benefit your long-term career plans in the field of public health. A special consideration will be given to candidates with exposure to a broad array of life experiences and viewpoints, and who can bring diverse perspectives and experiences to the fellowship project, public health overall. Now, applicants should highlight these attributes in your essay. And lastly, we will need your faculty advisor information. Now, this is only for applicants who have not yet graduated or whose transcript does not show the graduation date yet. An advisor will need to verify your graduation date. And finally, if you're not a US citizen, but instead a permanent resident, you'll be asked to indicate that in your application. And you'll be required to provide proof of residency status once you, you're required to provide proof of residency status if you are offered a position for the program. Oops, jumping over. But now we're going to take a little bit of time to hear about tips on applying to the application process. And I'm very pleased to welcome Raquel Ramos. Raquel is a current ASPPH CDC fellow based in CDC's Center for Surveillance, Epidemiology, and Laboratory Services, or CSELS, within the Division of Scientific Education and Professional Development. Raquel?
Thank you, Monica. Hi, everyone. Just a little bit of background from about me. I graduated from Emory Rollins School of Public Health with my MPH in Global Environmental Health. And then I started working for Emory before I accepted this position and started working with the CDC. I have a pretty awesome position, like Devin had mentioned. They give lots of time for learning, which was really important to me. So get into some tips for submitting a successful application. I think the first tip I have is pretty obvious, but make sure you follow the timeline and you submit on time. That means giving yourself plenty of time to read over your application, your essay, send it to professors or faculty members or other students that you feel comfortable reading it over, not just for grammatical errors, but also just to make sure that everything flows. That's the same thing with your resume and your CV. Make sure you get it reviewed and that it's specific to the position you are applying for. So if you're applying for multiple fellowships, you may need to shift your resume or CV around to highlight those experiences or those classes that stand out and make you a good applicant for that specific position. In terms of your recommendations, it is very important that they're quality recommendations and that they can speak highly about you. One thing that I did when I asked certain professors for recommendations was that I met with them. And so I told them a little bit about why I wanted the specific fellowship. And then I also made sure that they knew about my experiences outside of the classes that I took with them. So, they knew how I was as a student, but I wanted to make sure that they understood me as a whole person so that they were able to include that information in their recommendation if they chose to. I also sent them updated copies of my resume and CV so that they had all those experiences highlighted and knew exactly what I was trying to promote. And then I also felt comfortable sending them my personal statement essay. And this just kind of gave them also a more in-depth view of who I was and why I wanted the fellowship. And it kind of just, I think, in my opinion, helped make my entire application just mesh really well. In terms of your essay, I know that's been mentioned a bit. It is super important that you share your own personal experience and perspective and how this will contribute to the specific fellowship you're applying to. So try to be specific to assignments that are mentioned in the fellowship announcement and how your experience will help you to be successful in those specific assignments. If you're applying to multiple fellowships, you will have to write multiple essays. I applied for multiple fellowships and I was pretty much able to use the same, skeleton or backbone of one essay and then just, change certain vocabulary or assignments, words, that kind of thing, so that it was specific to each fellowship. I told a story with my essay. So I started off, talking about my personal life, my family, where I came from, how those experiences have shaped me. And then I went into my academic experience and career experience, and talked about how all those specific things not just make me who I am, but why they make me the perfect candidate for the specific fellowship I am applying to. CDC really praises themselves in including DEIA into everyday work life. So the more that you're able to include that and show that, you are different, you have experiences that not just make you a successful person in any career, but a successful person specifically at the CDC, will help make your application stronger. It's important for them to understand the whole applicant, not just what it says on your CV or your GPA, things like that. Your CV resume will show why you qualify for the position, and typically your transcripts will support that. But the essay should explain why you are the right person for the position. And then usually your recommendations will support that. It is also, I think, important to highlight those soft skills such as communication, teamwork, adaptability, creativity. There are a lot of skills that can be taught, whether that's data science or coding, things like that. But in terms of those soft skills, those are things that they want someone to come in with, that you can adapt quickly to a new position and a new team, that you're highly motivated, that you work well with a team, you communicate well, things like that. And then also just a good tip, I think, if you haven't graduated yet, and so your advisor will have to verify your graduation. If your advisor isn't someone that is writing a recommendation for you, just, let them know that you are applying to this so that they can get that heads up. And so they know to look out for that email to verify your graduation, because like I said, you want to give yourself plenty of time to submit your application. And so doing everything, as early as possible, and also letting everyone know of deadlines is important, because the last thing you want is to not be eligible for a fellowship because of a late application. Like Monica said, we're answering questions at the end of this webinar, so feel free to use that Q&A box. I'll be sticking around to answer any of them. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Raquel. It's very helpful hearing that insight from somebody who, you yourself has submitted a successful application. So thank you. So the first step in applying is to visit the ASPPH Fellowship Application Portal, which can be found at fellowships-internships.asppph.org. And this link is also available off the main fellowships page of the ASPPH website. You're going to log in or sign up for a new account directly from this page. Now, once you've logged in, you'll come to the home page for the ASPPH Application Portal. This page will show any open applications at the very top, including the application deadline and a link to view the full program announcement. Now, the program announcement is the most important resource you have when applying to the fellowship program. It's going to include detailed information about the fellowship program, all the open positions, the eligibility requirements, it'll review the procedures, criteria, timelines, and how to apply. I strongly recommend that you review the entire program announcement before starting an application. This is going to include all project descriptions for the available fellowship positions. And it's essential that you review this information to determine which positions are the best match for you. Now, the homepage also includes some quick information and links to additional resources, including a My Status section, which is shown here. Now, once you've submitted an application, you can track the progress of your application in this section. You can also find a user's manual with step-by-step instructions on how to apply at the bottom of the page in the resources section. You'll see here that there are 5 steps to complete and submit your application. Step 1 is the My Profile page. This is where you're going to enter your personal and contact information. Please be sure to use a permanent email address for your application, as this is the email that ASPPH will use to contact you about your application throughout the entire process. So if a school email might not be the best option if you will not have access to that email after graduation. Step 2 is the My Education tab, which is where you will enter your degree information and upload your resume and transcript. Now note that the application system will allow you to upload an unofficial graduate transcript for the purpose of the application. However, if you're offered and accept a fellowship position, you will be required to provide an official graduate transcript at that time. In addition, when you enter your graduation date, if you have not yet graduated, as Raquel just mentioned, you'll be directed to enter your faculty advisor information. Now, in part 3 of the application, you'll have the opportunity to generate an email to your faculty advisor simultaneously for the emails to your references. Now, verification of graduation date from your faculty advisor must be received by the application deadline. You should be sure to talk to your faculty advisor before the application deadline so that they are aware and will be prepared to respond. This step here in step 2 is also where you will upload your resume and graduate transcripts as noted earlier. Now, step 3 is My Application. And this is going to be where you select the positions you're applying to and upload your essays, as well as enter the information for your references. Now, you'll see a list of open positions for the fellowship program you're applying to on this page. If you're unsure which positions you want to apply to, there will be a link to the program announcement at the top of the page, which will include details about each position. Now, you will apply to a position you're interested in by simply uploading an essay to that position. As mentioned earlier, you may apply to a maximum of 3 positions per program. The system will not allow you to upload more than 3 essays. The reference section at the bottom of section 3 is where you will enter the contact information for the 2 people who have agreed to write your letters of recommendation. Now, there's no restriction on whom you request to be your reference, but they should be people who can speak well to your experience and qualifications for the program and the positions you're applying to. Now, you'll see at the bottom of the page a newly implemented feature, the Send Now button. Now, this new feature will give you the opportunity to generate emails to your faculty advisor if you have not yet graduated, and to your references before submitting your application. If you do not click Send Now in this stage of the application, then the emails won't go out until you actually submit the application. Now remember, the deadline for your faculty advisor and references to submit their pieces is the same as your application deadline. So we really do recommend utilizing the Send Now feature to generate the emails before submitting your application, so that they also have time to complete their recommendations before the deadline. In step 4, you'll review your entire application. If you need to make any changes, simply click on the pencil icon next to the section you want to revise, and it'll take you back to that section to make any changes. The final step is to submit your application, which is step 5. Check the box to electronically sign your application and then hit the Submit button. When your application is successfully submitted to ASPPH, you'll receive a confirmation email. The system will also, again, it'll automatically generate the emails to your references and faculty advisor if you have not already done so. Now, once you've submitted your application, you may rescind it at any time to make changes from the homepage by simply clicking on the pencil icon. As long as you resubmit the application by the deadline, your application will be reviewed. This is a good option if you want Your references and faculty advisor, again, if you need to go and resend the emails to your faculty advisor or your recommenders. And just remember, if you rescind, you need to resubmit your application by the application deadline. ASPPH will not accept any incomplete or late applications. And this includes, of course, missing information and submissions from your references and faculty advisor. Now, once the deadline has passed, ASPPH will review all applications for completeness and eligibility. We'll update your status in the system when your application has been verified and moved along to the review stage. You may view your application status at any time when you are logged into the system. The system will automatically send you an email update when there is a change in status. This is also where you will see if your recommenders and advisors have submitted their materials. ASPPH ensures that all eligible completed applications that are submitted by the deadline will be reviewed in an open, fair, and objective process. Each application is reviewed by 2 faculty or staff members from ASPPH member institutions, but not from the same institution as the applicant. Applications are then scored according to the criteria noted in the program announcement. And the top applicants progress to the next phase, the technical review. During this time, applicants may be contacted for interviews directly by CDC. Moving on to the technical review phase at CDC does not guarantee that you will receive an interview, only that your application has been sent to the placement agency for review. It is possible that not all applicants in the technical review phase will receive interviews. Individuals selected for positions will be contacted directly by ASPPH via phone and email. And those applicants who are not selected will be notified by ASPPH by email. So that ends the formal presentation, and we're now going to open the lines for questions. Please click the button for the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen and type your question into the box. I'll then direct your questions to one of today's speakers. And we currently have a good amount of time to answer some questions. So I'm going to go ahead and stop my screen share so I can pull up the Q&A. Right, so Raquel and Devin, if you want to turn your cameras on, if that's okay, and I'll go ahead and I'll triage the questions. So the first one is, I see that on the application, you have an option to either waive your right or not waive your right to the letter that recommenders. What would you recommend? Typically people waive the right, but honestly, I don't think it makes a huge amount of difference whether you do or you don't waive your right. But traditionally, folks don't have the privilege of reading their letters of recommendation. So, but honestly, I really don't think that it's considered, at least not in our selection process. So are there opportunities for international travel during the fellowship? So this is really going to depend on the position. So as I mentioned earlier, not all positions will come with a travel and training allowance. The travel and training allowance, the need and the amount for it is decided upon by the host agency. So they will have a general idea of what they envision for their fellow and the types of trips. Some offices will say, you know what, there's really no need for any additional travel. This position's located in Atlanta and really all their time's going to be focused here. Other offices might have, certain site visits that they want you to attend at, very, in domestic locations. And once in a while, there are in fact those offices that will require international travel. So it has occurred in the past, but it's not. It's certainly not the norm for most fellowships. So do you do all of the program components in addition to the work with the host agency mean that you are busy and working more than 40 hours a week? Well, so we do expect fellows, and just as an FYI, currently all our fellows are still working remotely, and I'll let Devin and Raquel each talk a little bit about what their schedules have looked like. And we're I think CDC is still in phase one. I don't believe everybody's back at the office. And all of our positions that we've advertised this year do have a do have a hybrid option, and some actually have a full remote option. And that is noted in the program announcement, which ones have those options. So, but in general, we do ask that all fellows are online and available for your typical 40-hour work week and during the same general hours as your mentors and other colleagues with whom you're going to be working. Because of course, to make the most out of a mentored fellowship program, you need to actually have that, that engagement with your mentors and other CDC staff. So, if Devin and Raquel, if you want to take a stab at this and talk about, what your schedules look like.
Sure. I can say that I work a 40-hour work week, and I do a ton of the engagement and education stuff, but my mentor encourages that, and she's never like, you have to work overtime because you went to that talk for an hour. That's like the opposite of what a fellowship is for. So I think that's my favorite part of the fellowship is in other jobs. And like, if you are an FTE at the CDC, a lot of the organizations will say in a little subtext, your time spent, attending these meetings or doing these events cannot be used toward your FTE hours. So that's something to take into account. Like, that is a great part of being a fellow.
Yeah, I agree with what Devin says. I definitely work a 40-hour work week, but a good chunk of it is spent doing different webinars or also different classes and courses through Coursera, O'Reilly, or CDC Train. And my mentors both encourage that. They just like to be kept to the loop of what I'm doing and when it is. But I've never been told no, or that I have to work longer or more hours because I'm, taking a class or joining a webinar.
Yeah, I think the important thing to note here, as you both touched on a little bit, is that you're here during the fellowship. You're here to learn, right? This is a educational training program, so you are not an FTE, which a full-time employee. So you're not a federal employee of CDC. So you're not you don't have to adhere to some of the strict requirements as far as scheduling and how your time is spent, because really you're there to learn. And that's a really important aspect to the fellowship program. Okay, so we have a question. What are you looking for in the essay component? So I know, Raquel, you hit on that quite a bit. And as I mentioned also, you really want to let yourself shine through on this essay, and not just in the, talking about hardcore skills and things like that, but also, what you have to bring personally to the fellowship program as a public health professional. And one of the things that ASPPH and CDC are really trying to do with the fellowship program is to make sure that our applicant pool and the people who actually become fellows are representative of the demographics that public health practitioners serve, right? So we want to make sure that there is that diversity, and not just, racial and ethnic diversity, but just overall from all traditionally marginalized communities across the board, folks from lower socioeconomic communities. We really want to make sure that we have people from all walks of life represented in this fellowship. So that's really important, to find that thing that makes you personally stand out and bring that forth in the essay. But Raquel, I don't know if there's anything you want to add to what you said earlier. And Devin, if there's anything you'd like to add.
I think you hit on it, you know, for the most part, make sure it's your own personal experience and they can really see why you're the right fit. You know, you're submitting other applicant materials such as your, you know, resume, CV and transcripts and recommendations. And those are all, for the most part, going to talk about why you qualify for the fellowship, but the essay is really your time to say why you want it. And why you are the right fit. I know further down, you know, I'm skipping ahead, Monica, but looking through the questions, someone asked if they're applying to multiple fellowships, if they can use the same essay and tailor it. I think I mentioned that is what I did. I applied to multiple fellowships through ASPPH, and I wrote one essay that I thought was really good and had, you know, professors read over it and used it for that fellowship. And then I applied for more, and I took basically the same essay but changed components to tailor it to the fellowship position. And I highly recommend doing that. If, you know, at least for me, I think it can be difficult to write 3 unique, great essays. And if you don't have to do it, don't spend your time doing it. Get one really good essay that you feel great about, and then just switch it up a little bit for all the different opportunities.
Devin, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I would totally agree with what you both said. I think as students, we have a lot of we have or had a lot of diverse experiences, even if they're small. And so if you had like a small project that was specific to environmental, you know, public health, and you did an internship on infectious diseases, and you want to apply to these different types of ASPPH fellowships, that's exactly what I did. I applied to like an environmental one and a data one and this, because I had, you know, small experiences in each one, but significant to me. And each one had kind of like a different learning opportunity. So yeah, like think of every single little thing that you have done in school, every single meeting that impacted you, and speak to it and like paint a story for each one.
Right. And even if you don't have experience in a particular area, again, this program is about learning, right? So we really want to find, you know, the best match. And some of that, and part of that is finding people, the person who will benefit the most out of a particular experience. So even if you don't have your own personal experience in that particular area, that doesn't mean that you don't have a strong passion for it or that you want to pursue it. So just explain why that is. You know, if you really want to, you know, learn more about chronic disease prevention, why is that? You know, maybe, you know, explain your interest, explain why it's something that you personally are passionate about and that you want to learn more about, and how that fits into your overall career path. I think all of that's going to play a big role in making a strong essay. Right, so we have a question. So can letters of recommendation obtained for this application be used for other fellowship programs? So the thing to remember that at this stage in the game for this year, for the cycle 2023, this is the last ASPPH program that's going to be available. So applications for the USDA program, the EPA program have already closed. So if you had applied to one of those and you're asking about maybe using one, you know, letters that you used for the EPA or the USDA fellowship, just make sure that the letters don't specify USDA or EPA, right? Because you don't want somebody who's reviewing there's an application for the CDC to see a letter that specifies USDA. So if they don't, it's totally fine to use the same letters. Again, it might just, I always recommend to candidates that if the writer of the letter wants to state the fellowship, just have them say ASPPH fellowship, right? Because that can be applied to any of our programs. So definitely, as long as it doesn't explicitly state a particular program or agency, then you definitely can reuse the letters. So question, do I need to get an ASPPH membership to apply to the fellowship? The thing to remember is that ASPPH does not have individual memberships. So as a student, you cannot be, you do not like pay or join individually for a membership with ASPPH. ASPPH membership is institutional. So your school or program of public health must be an ASPPH member. And you can go on our website under and look at the membership directory to see if your school or program is there. Also, the application system has a drop down, and it's inclusive. It's updated all the time as we get new members. So if you're in the application system and your school or program isn't under that dropdown, that means that your degree does not come from an ASPPH member institution. And in that case, you would not be eligible for the program. So I just want to ask that if there are opportunities in public health for non-US citizens and those who have bachelor's medical dental degrees from outside the United States, I'm sure there are lots of them, but unfortunately not with ASPPH. I do encourage you just to Google, for example, CDC fellowships, or I know like SAMHSA and HRSA, NIH and other federal agencies have a number of fellowship opportunities, and some of them are open to non-US citizens. Keep in mind the reason why our program and many of the other governmental public health fellowship programs require that you're a US citizen or permanent resident is because they're funded by federal money, right? It's federal, it's taxpayer money that is funding these programs. So they are intended to go back into programs that specifically benefit, the U.S. population and citizenship. Okay, so we have another question. If you're applying to multiple CDC postings that each have their separate essay, okay, we talked about that already. Does the resume have to be formatted as a federal resume? No, it does not. You can have any format for a CV or resume and upload it. Will the recording be provided to registrants? Yes, we do plan on having the recorded session for this webinar available up in our website, and that typically is done within about 48 hours. It'll be up on our website. So when is the typical application period for internship? Currently, we do not have any internship opportunities available. This year, they're all fellowship opportunities. And as I mentioned a little while ago, the CDC fellowship program is the final program for this year's cycle. So we have, can the fellowship be remote work? So again, in the program announcement, under location, it'll state where your host office is based. So whether it's Atlanta or San Juan or Hyattsville, it'll state that city name, but then afterward, it'll also state whether it's there's a remote possibility or a hybrid opportunity. Of course, if it's a hybrid opportunity, you will likely be expected to relocate to that city. So for example, Atlanta, where you would be able to work remotely part of the time and then go in once in a while. Or it could be, for example, remote at the beginning, like the first couple of months of your fellowship, and then they would expect you to move to the location later on. So it's really going to be based it's going to be a case-by-case on a case-by-case basis, and that'll be decided upon with your mentor. But I know it's still pretty flexible. Devin and Raquel, do you want to talk about what, well, since you started when things were even more locked up or locked down, but how are things looking at CDC moving forward with people getting back into the office?
I can speak to my branch and my team. We just talked about it in a meeting this week, and they're totally changing the structure of our office so that only people that are in office 5 days a week even have their own office anymore. So like remote work is super normal. My boss doesn't go into the CDC campus. She works remote. And so, yeah, I think it's just different position to position and branch to branch and division to division. But I think they're realizing that people are working really efficiently remote as well. So they're giving like hybrid options. Most of our meetings right now have people in person there, and then there are people remote.
Yeah, same thing with my branch. In terms of specific offices, it's really only people who do come in 5 days a week. I would say the majority of my team works hybrid. I don't know really if there is anyone who goes in 5 days a week that I, have a daily interaction with, and they've had no problem. I work fully remote, but have the option to go in. And so I've gone in usually on Tuesdays, because that's when we have our big team all hands meetings. And they're super cool about that. It's like a cubicle sharing type thing that they have, where you just like sign up for a cubicle and then you go, and that's where you are for the day. And so that's been a good time. But they are fine. I live in Maryland and have family there. And so, around the holidays, I was hoping to be in Maryland for longer than just, 2-3 days for Christmas. And they were okay with me working remotely from Maryland for the week and things like that. But I don't see the CDC really, in terms of the future. I feel like it's going to stay on the same path where they emphasize hybrid work and are totally fine with remote.
Right. Yeah, agreed. Thank you. And from my perspective of working with folks there at CDC, I get that same impression. And the other thing to remember is that if you are fully remote, most likely you will have some travel and training allowance, with the expectation that you would travel to the host office maybe once or twice throughout the duration of your fellowship period. Because I think it's really important, if at all possible, to be able to get, their, boots down on the ground at headquarters, or at, in your host office, and just see what CDC is all about, really get in there and meet people in person. So most likely that will be expected, even if you're fully remote. So we have a question: are there any opportunities specifically for students with disabilities? No, there aren't, but I'll tell you one thing. Please, that goes back to that whole holistic approach to this application process. You definitely want to talk about, if you are somebody who has a disability, bring that up in your essay. Talk about how it's affected your own personal experience, how it's influenced your desire to pursue public health, things like that. So that's a perfect example of one of those things that makes you unique, and will allow you to bring a very specific perspective to the fellowship. Okay. So how much are the stipends? So the stipends are noted in the program announcement. So go online and look at that program announcement that I mentioned to you earlier, which is going to be your greatest resource. And that has all the information specified in there. So roughly how many applicants are received, and how many will be selected after the telephone interview, so after the technical review. So for this year, we are seeking 21 fellows. So we have 21 fellowship opportunities available on our website. And again, you can see what each of those are by going in and looking at the program announcement on our website. So we currently have, I don't have the website pulled up in front of me, but the last time I checked, which was late last week, we had almost 300 applications started. So it's going to be a competitive season. So definitely, we still encourage you, please apply. Don't let that dissuade you from applying. It's always competitive, right? So, but definitely, work hard on that essay, as mentioned, find a way to make yourself stand out and shine, and give it your best shot. I think we have a number of really great opportunities available this year, And you won't know unless you try. So I do encourage you to apply. Okay, so do you upload recommendations or just include contact information? So you only need to put in the name and the email address of your recommender, and then you will hit the submit or send email to them. The system will then send an email to your recommender, which will send them a personalized link where they themselves will upload their letters of recommendation. Okay. So it says, does the fellowship qualify candidates to enter the U.S. Public Health Commission Corps? No, it is not a requirement, but it is something that many of our fellows will do after the fellowship. It has been something that has been very appealing and something that our fellows become engaged with, especially since they gain that exposure while working there in the federal agency. But I'm sorry to say that's all we have time for on our schedule today. So I want to extend my gratitude to both Devin and Raquel for taking the time to speak with me today on the fellowship program. And thank you so much to all of you for taking the time to participate in the webinar. This concludes today's webinar. I wish you all a happy Valentine's Day. And don't forget, I Heart Public Health, and get out there and do good things. Thanks so much, everybody. Bye-bye.